Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Theravada Buddhism series, Dhamma talk number 7. The title is Bodhisatta in Pali, Bodhisattva in Sanskrit. In Theravada Buddhism, a Bodhisatta, Bodhisatta, a Bodhisatta is someone who is on their way to becoming a fully self-enlightened Buddha. There are some requirements for it. That person needed to meet a living self-enlightened Buddha, and then received a prediction that they would become a self-enlightened Buddha in the future. That's a definition of Bodhisatta in Theravada Buddhism. Our last Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha is a first name, Gautama is a family name. Buddha is the title based on the quality. Eons of world cycles ago, our last Buddha was a hermit named Sumedha. At the living period of the Buddha Dipinkara, when Buddha Dipinkara was alive and teaching, he was a hermit named Sumedha. The hermit was endowed with 8 jhanas. In other words, he has practiced samatha meditation and had reached the highest level. One day he heard that the Buddha was coming to the area where he resided, and everyone was preparing a path where the Buddha was going to come, for the Buddha and his disciple, so that they can walk with ease. Hermit Sumedha also took a section of the path where it was wet and muddy. He was repairing his own section. Everybody took a little section of their own. He was still repairing the path when Buddha arrived to his section. It was right near the end of his repairing. He could have made the path ready with his psychic power, and he didn't. Instead, he laid down his body over the puddle, over the mud, so that the Buddha and the disciple could walk over him to avoid the mud and the water puddle. And he wished, may this did become the cause of becoming a self-enlightened Buddha. and be able to guide beings to be free from all form of suffering. That was his wish. May this deed become the cause of becoming a self-enlightened Buddha and be able to guide beings to be free from all form of suffering. As we all know, he was endowed with 8 jhanas. So he is fully prepared and ready. Just with a simple Dharma guidance from the Buddha, Dipankara, would make him become an Arhata and escape from samsara. The Buddha Dipankara just have to give him a little sermon and he would have fully enlightened as a Arahanta. And that's the end of his life from the round of samsara. However, his chanda, you still remember the word chanda from last talk. His chanda, or wish, or want, or desire to become a Buddha and help and guide and teach beings to escape from all form of suffering was so strong. He had forsaken his own instant liberation from suffering and wished for Buddhahood. He knew quite well that he had to suffer eons and eons of world cycles before he became a Buddha. That chanda, that wish, is the perfect example of predominance wish. Chanda dipati. That wish, that desire, that chanda took over everything. And that chanda became the leader. And that was it. The Dipankara Buddha assessed the hermit parami. In other words, how much he had practiced, how wholesome he is, the perfection. And knew that the hermit possessed the qualities to become a self-enlightened Buddha sometime in the future. So the Buddha Dipankara predicted the hermit will become the Buddha Gautama. Even the name was pronounced Buddha Gautama after he had perfected 30 paramis, 30 perfections for 4 eons and 100,000 world cycles. That's how much he has to practice to perfect all the paramis. One of the rebirth of the Bodhisatta, now the hermit Sumedha, from that moment till he become a Buddha, we call him Bodhisatta. Buddhahood, Buddha to be practicing to become a Buddha. In one of his rebirth, he was Prince Mahajanaka. That was his name. He was a prince, Mahajanaka, full name. He sailed across the sea to trade and grow his fortune so that he could raise an army to take back the kingdom that his father had lost. As he was sailing one day, a great storm came down and hit the ship and wrecked it. The ship sank and all the sailors were drowned or eaten by the sea predators, predator fish, sharks, and so on. However, this Mahajanaka, he rubbed his body with honey and ghee. And climbed to the top of the mast of the ship and jumped as far away as possible from the ship to escape the nearby predators. Then he swam for 7 days and 7 nights, even though there was no hope for survival. At that time, sea guardian female Deva showed herself because she is curious. This person is swimming for 7 days. There's no island, there's no land. He will surely die. Wonder why he is doing this. She was curious. She showed herself and asked why he bothered to swim, even though it was surely a doomed scenario. His answer was whether he ends up dead or not was not his concern. And putting the best effort to deal with the problem at hand was his concern. That's why he never gave up. He put all his effort, 7 days and 7 nights, floating and swimming and floating and swimming without giving up. Because his effort is so great. And he knows there's a problem. The problem is he will drown and die. And he works by putting effort to solve that problem. Even though logic dictates that he would die eventually. That was his practice to perfection in terms of effort. That Viriya Parami, perfection in terms of effort. That's how he has to practice. When the effort takes over, everything becomes the follower. That effort of Viriya is the perfect example of predominance effort. Viriya Dipati. Viriya take over and all the mental factors and consciousness fall in line and follow after that. All other things, logic, reason, probability, possibility, nothing is important. Effort took over, everything fall in line. In all of our lives, one faces ups and downs to a greater or lesser degree. When things are going well, One pats oneself on the back and say, how great I was, how determined I was. The great ego. However, once the going gets very, very, very tough, one surrenders to the inevitability. There is no more big I. The spirit's broken, and the one abandoned their resolution or goal. That's it. Oh, it is inevitable. Why bother? Whatever the resolution he has made is all washed out and gone. That's most of us in our lives. Why waste our effort? Why waste our energy? Why waste our time to go against the tide? But let's look at Bodhisatta, Hermit Sumedha. This Bodhisatta endured many lives, some great and with ease. He has great lives, good lives, and with ease. For this case, he is enjoying, not enduring. And he endures some lives which are quite difficult. He has to endure them. And there are many lives he become an animal and birds. He endure them, he go through. Because his objective is to become a Buddha. And here, this is my take. Once a person becomes a confirmed Bodhisatta by a living, self-enlightened Buddha, the feeling of wanting to become a Buddha or something or somewhat like that remains in the multitudes of life. That little nudge or little cursor of wanting to be Buddhahood is always there, I assume. And whether this Bodhisatta, whether it is a great seductive and pleasurable lives or down and out lives or animals or birds' lives, the Bodhisatta never deviate from the goal of Buddhahood. That was his determination. He's determined to become a Buddha. He never deviate, he never surrender, regardless how great or how bad the lives were. That is the perfect example of predominant consciousness. Citta Dipati, resolute mind. Bodhisatta always made the right and wholesome choices throughout many of his lives. We can read in many Jataka tales, whether there's animals or birds or humans, and how he faced his life and what kind of choices he made. He even sacrificed his life for the sake of others, because that's a right thing to do. Those are the acts towards the perfection of wisdom. Just doesn't happen overnight. Lives after lives after lives. Faces problems after problems after problems, and make the right choice for the solution, which means to help, to safeguard others without hurting, harming, and in a wholesome way. In the Jataka, there was 10 great births of the Buddha. In the earlier parts, he was not very well known or person or animals or birds, and slowly become mature and mature. When closer to the Buddhahood, become a human, but very specific, 10 great human birth. In other words, each human birth, each story epitomized the one kind of parami, one kind of perfection, because he is in a very mature level now. And these 10 great births, one we already know, Mahajataka, Mahajanaka, the prince with the shipwreck. That was his perfection and effort. And there's another life called Bodhisatta. Bodhisatta, that was the name. So in that Jataka, or in that tale, the Bodhisattva show his skill of intelligence, fair, just, and wholesome way. He was a genius, intelligent, very bright and smart. He makes his decision fairly, justly, wholesomely, in both spiritual and temporal matters. He was a great architect. He redesigned the whole city, because he was the advisor or counselor to the king. He redraw, reshape, rebuild the walls, canals, water storage, food storage, city design. He was a great architect in that too. He's multi-talented. Planning, managing, looking after the welfare of the people. And also, he consult many matters. Now, kings are very fickle, but he knows how to manage and direct to the right direction. And at that time too, in that continent, there was another genius. But he is not moral, he's wicked, self-interest there. So what that genius did was he organized and put together 101 kings under his instruction. And they fight and they conquer, they fight and they conquer. Eventually that 101 kings become the empire under the instruction of that, let's call it wicked genius. And finally they march on. This is the last kingdom he has to take. They march. That is where Bodhisatta lived. They siege the city, cut out all their food. But Bodhisatta is already prepared. Instead of being starving and worrying, he even threw the food from the city to the enemies so that they can eat. The siege army cut out the water supply, but he already has a lot of artesian well and canals. He even put a line of water for those people to drink. Those are the details, of course. They cut out energy supply. In those days, firewood, but he has plenty. But to make the long story short, he won the war without anybody dying. Nobody is dead. With his intelligence, he won over the wicked genius. The wicked genius tricked him and he countered tricked. So his genius level is he can even defeat an 101 king's army without throwing a single shot of arrows, without anybody dying. To that level, his intelligence was great. And that is the human tales, human story of how much he has perfected his wisdom and intelligence, both temporal and spiritual. These are near Buddhahood. And of course, his last life, Siddhartha Gautama. He practiced and he practiced and he practiced. And eventually, the highest of all wisdom, he penetrates into the full noble truth by himself without a teacher. That was the epitome of the wisdom. Those are the perfect example of what predominates wisdom. Vimansadipati is. So we use the Bodhisatta. Who or what is Bodhisatta and his life. At the same time, shows how he has perfected his paramis and how he is a possessor of all the full predominance. Chandadipati, Variyadipati, Chaitadipati, and Vimansadipati. That is the perfect example. One may wish for Buddhahood at any time. No, every one of us can wish for a Buddhahood at any time. But that doesn't make us a Bodhisatta. Wishing to become a Buddha doesn't make us a Bodhisatta. Wishing and practicing to become a Buddha doesn't make us a Bodhisatta. From Theravada point of view, only when a person meets a self-enlightened Buddha and received a prediction that one day will become a self-enlightened Buddha. Only then that person is known or called as Bodhisatta. Now, let's talk about the yogis, ourselves, the practitioners. If we truly want to rid ourselves of all mental defilements and suffering for good, we must have one of the full predominance. We must have one of the full predominance. You have to assess and see which one you are the strongest and follow that one and make it into the predominant condition. Only then one will become an arhata and attain nibbana. May all of you be able to become a possessor of one of the full predominance and attain nibbana as soon as possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.